Hi everybody, this is Karen Grunberg. I am going to attempt to try and show you how I made this tag. I have never done this before, so if I make mistakes talking, I apologize ahead of time, or even demonstrating. So anyway, here we go. This is a tag that I made, and it has the embossing in the background. So I'm going to start by showing you how to do the embossing and then the inking, which then resists the embossed part. Relatively simple, but I thought it might be fun to actually see it. I'm going to use the embossing ink that I have, which is by Ink Essentials. I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's by Ranger, basically. And then the embossing powder I'm going to use is this sparkly one. You don't have to do this, you could just use a clear one, or even white if you want it to really stand out. Obviously, if you do the clear, my cream background comes up, whereas if you did white, it would look white, or if you used a white tag and used clear, then that would work too. This one is called Stardust. It's a little sparkly, and I'm not normally a super sparkly kind of gal, but I like it. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this. Since it's going to be embossed, I'm going to try and do it relatively quickly because it needs to stay wet for me to be able to. These two stamps come from the Girls Papery stamp set, and I don't have the box here, so I can't show it to you, but it's basically tinsel. Here it is. This is the rest of the stamps in that set. It's these two that I used. This is Tinsel and Twig. It's the Margie's new line for Christmas. Alright, here we go. I'm going to start doing this. I basically put some embossing ink, and then I'm just going to ink it randomly anywhere that I like. You can't really see the embossing ink. That's sort of the point of it. It's see-through. There's really no science to this. I'm just putting it in several places in the card. And then I exchange this. You have to be careful to make sure you are actually stamping it, because it's hard to see. And if you don't, then you won't be able to then attach powder to it. Alright, so here's some more. And I think that's all of the ones I need to do. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my tag in this little tray. I'm very good at making a mess with this thing, so expect me to make a big mess, because I always do. I know other people who are incredible at this, and they can clean up their tag, their powder in a second, but not me. Alright, and then you shake off the excess. Shake, 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 shake really well. I always tend to do this, I'm not sure why, but there's some that gets stuck. It must be that I have the ink there a little bit, so I just make sure that it's off, all the excess. You can't, maybe you can see it, maybe you can't, I'm not sure, but it's basically all there now. And then I'm going to quickly put my powder back, because otherwise I will definitely spray it all over the place. I've done that before. And I have carpets in my house, so they are not easy to clean. And I don't have a scrap room, so my scrappy stuff is in my living room, which means if I make a mess, it's not pretty. And you can't see it, but I already did make a huge mess. I'm going to sweep this away before it flies everywhere, because we're now going to use the heater, the emboss heat tool thing, to actually emboss it. So here we go. I would talk over this, but I think it's pretty loud, so I'm not sure it's going to come across. So I'm avoiding doing that. I'll try and do it quickly. All done. So it's all embossed. If you've never embossed before, the way you know that it worked is that the little crystals, I guess, or whatever, change shape, so they become like liquidy, and then you can tell that they're there, and once they're done, they're pretty much done. It doesn't come off. Anything that comes off is total excess, and you didn't need it to begin with. Alright, so now once you've actually embossed it, you can then ink it, because that's the whole point, is that the embossed parts will resist the ink. And it's not perfect. If you look closely, you'll see that my didn't stamp it perfectly, but that generally doesn't tend to bother me. If it does bother you, you'll just have to be more careful. Alright, so the inks that I'm using here are a little bit different than the one I used on the tag. I'm using lighter versions, but it really doesn't matter. The idea stays true. So I'm going to use the blue one. I'm going to start with tumbled glass. So this is a distressed ink by Ranger, Tim Holtz, and I'm using the blending tool, which is awesome. And basically what you do is you put in some ink on your tool, and then you start from the outside and move in circular motions. This makes it so that the tool doesn't leave any little marks of the ink, and it makes it easy for you to put it all over. I tend to be weak, and I guess I don't ink enough, so I go back and forth between the pad and my tag very often. I'm sure other people do a much better job of it than I do. And I'm no expert at the inking either, but I love these inks. They blend really beautifully. I love the blending tool. And whenever I do ink, which is not very often on my layouts, but very often in my mixed media stuff or fun stuff that I do, I always use the blending tool because I love it. It makes it much, much easier. So there you go. So we covered the first layer, and as you can see, it's already resisting, and there are mistakes here, you can tell. There's obviously some embossed section there that it won't let me ink over. And if you want this darker, you can just either obviously use a darker ink, or you can just do it again and again and again, and it will get darker. So what I like to do is mix several inks. So now that I've used tumbled glass, I'm going to use a little bit of broken china to make it a little darker. So here we go. See, it's a little darker. I like that two-tone look, even though it's very subtle, but I like it more even when it's subtle. So here we go. A little bit more, and you can't tell, but there are several shades here. You can obviously make it more drastic. And then lastly, I like to go around the edges in a different color. In these cases, like this one, I used darker colors, but this is peeled paint. And I put some on my tool, and then I'm just going to go over the edges. And as you can see, it already shows pretty well. I try not to go too far, but it, you know, if you wanted to make your whole tag green instead of blue, that's certainly an option too. It's not a big deal. So there you go. And then what I like to do is go back to my blue, probably my dark blue, and actually go again. I like to do the blending. So if I go over the whole thing again, it blends in a little bit better into the background. Some people like it to stand out, and there's nothing wrong with that either. It really is a choice that you make. And that's it. There is our tag. You can do more or less. Really depends on what you like. But it's the same idea. And then the only other thing I did on this tag was to take pieces of things that I already had. So I took this embellishment set from the Girls Papery, and I specifically took this one, as you can tell. And then I took this button in the middle because I wanted it to be more ornamental, and I changed it for the button in this button set. I basically jammed it in there, to be honest. And then I glued it really well to make sure. And then for the bottom, I used this ribbon, so I glued the ribbon down, and then I cut a sticker from this big, huge sticker set that comes in, which is awesome because it has many, many, many pages of stuff in it. And one of the pages, which I think is the last page, has these little things. And if you see this strip that I used here, it says Season's Greetings. And the strip is a little bigger than my tag, so I actually put the strip on, centered it, and then cut off on both sides to make sure it would fit my tag. And then I did a tiny bit of stitching on it to make sure it wouldn't fall if I decided to mail it. And that's it. There you go. You have this tag. I hope you like this, and I hope it worked.